Welcome back, everybody, to the ATL Baseball Podcast, episode 11. Here today, I'm joined by Coach Eddie Smith of Utah Valley University. I'm super excited to have him on. Before we get going, I'd like to shout out our sponsor, lineupcards.com. They'll design, print custom 4-part lineup cards for you. They'll do 11 by 17 dugout cards for baseball and softball teams. You do black, white, or color. Just shoot them your logo and your roster, and they'll upload that and create one for you, and so they'll send you a proof and ship them out to you. It's really easy, and we've used them for quite some time now, and they do great work. So head over to lineupcards.com. Without any further ado, Coach Smith, how we doing?
Doing great, Michael. Awesome to be here today.
Why don't you introduce yourself for the people listening that may not know about you, where you kind of started at and where you are today?
Well, it's been a fun journey, I'll tell you that much. I'm from Olympia, Washington, born and raised there. Got to play a couple years of junior college baseball, very close to my home in Centralia, Washington, then transferred to the University of Notre Dame to finish my playing career. Been coaching now for 19 years. I started at the University of Virginia, had stops along the way as an assistant at Santa Clara, Notre Dame. Then I was a head coach at a junior college in Washington, Lower Columbia College. And from there, I went to Tulane and LSU as a hitting coach and worked on the recruiting side as well before landing at Utah Valley University, my first opportunity to be a Division I head coach. And I've been here now for 3 seasons and excited to get going here this spring. It's been a fun ride, I'll tell you that. That's for sure. It was something where the program, it was at a point where it just needed an injection of ideas and energy. And there certainly were a lot of different areas where improvement was desperately, desperately needed. So it's just been a really fun process the last 2 years. And, everything from redesigning all of our uniforms to our locker room projects. And then most importantly, our coaching staff and our recruiting, our roster makeover. It's been a really fun 2 seasons.
I want to get to that later today because I'm so curious your thoughts of turning around a program from, I mean, really just the foundation. I mean, before you got there, I think it said 10-47 was what they were before you got there, and just the whole rebranding, washing everything out. And I mean, I've seen obviously your Twitter with you guys are building. You have the new locker room in, which is really exciting. We did that at Oglethorpe one year, and it's amazing what you can turn the space into. One of the topics that you had, and I was so persistent on getting this absolutely right. I love how you worded this: prioritizing resources in a program.
Yeah.
When you sent me that, it made me stop and think a little bit. I love how you worded that, and I'm so curious where you're going to take that and how you're going to go about that. And it's a little bit of kind of like what we were just talking about of turning a program around. So what do you mean by prioritizing resources in a program?
Well, I think it's such a critical thing for everybody out there. I mean, even at LSU, we had to choose at times between apples or oranges to support our players and support our quest to win championships. And every program in the country is doing that in different ways. I've had the unique perspective to be at the junior college level, to be in the West Coast Conference, to be in the WAC, and to be in the SEC and the ACC, where resources are a little bit limitless in those conferences. And so we're all making those decisions as coaches each and every day. Um, and I just think it's one of the most important things that we do. Where do we choose to spend our money? And equally, and probably more important, where do we choose to spend our time? And, when you talk about money, hey, do you get TrackMan or do you get Rapsodo and a couple more pitching machines? Do you choose to uh, maybe drive a 9-hour bus ride one time to save that flight so that you can get the whole team better travel suits and a new set of uniforms? Those are the decisions that practically every program in the country, save maybe 50 out there, are having to make each and every day. I don't care what level it is of college baseball. So I think those are
Yeah.
really important things, that those decisions you make have huge, huge implications on what your program does. But I think equally as important, more important, how do you spend your time as a team? We're limited in the time that we can have with our players by the NCAA rules. and we try to milk every ounce of production out of that time that we can. And so I think it's so important to be organized. There's a million ways to teach the game of baseball, and so many of them can be effective. But I think as a coach, it's so important to prioritize where are you going to put your um, your teaching? Where are you going to use that time to make the program and that specific team you have that year the best that it could possibly be? Because that time resource is so critical, you know. And I always use the comparison of a suitcase. Okay, I'm going to give you, if you're a coach, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and believe that you're putting every ounce of energy and thought and intelligence and strategy you got into your craft of coaching. And if you're packing a suitcase for a 10-day trip and you're trying to get it all packed in there so that it fits, you know, within the limits of your baggage restrictions with the airline, and you're packing that thing to the brim, it's the same thing. That's what we should be doing as coaches. And so my idea or my philosophy is that, hey, if we're going to bring something new into what we're coaching our players with, into the program, whatever it might be, we got to take something out because we're already at capacity. And so what you're bringing in has got to be markedly better than what you're going to be subtracting. If you're going to add, you're going to have to subtract because you're already at capacity. So to me, when I'm talking about resources, that time resource and how you prioritize things in the program is so critical. Um, and, you know, I think we all every day fight that thought of, hey, if we could just get an extra $10,000 here or $30,000 there, how nice it would be for this, that, and the other. That's the case for every college baseball coach in the country. There's no doubt about that. But with that said, you can never ignore the value of the human resource. I mean, the way that your program goes about it, with your energy, with your plan, with your commitment, with your obsession on the mission, from your head coach to your assistant coaches to your student managers, certainly your support staff and your leadership in your athletic department. I mean, those resources that you have of human ingenuity, they can be more powerful than any dollar figure out there. They really can. And so I think all of those things really add up to being what propels programs. And it's why some programs succeed and some programs just kind of flounder around in mediocrity.
Wow. You you said so many great things there that I don't think many people realize the day in and day out decisions you have to make, especially as a head coach, making the decisions of do we fly, do we drive, save this money, save that money. You hit the nail on the head with the human resource of some coaches are just better than others, right? Like they're they put more time in, they're more effective. I love the suitcase analogy. That's unique. I've never heard anyone use that before. Do you think would you say that each coach carries a different size suitcase of what they can bring, what their knowledge and what they can give to the players?
Oh, absolutely. Um, I think it's just like anything in the world. There's better players. There's you know, better real estate brokers. There's better umpires. There's better coaches. So I mean, you know, math tells us that, hey, you know, use the bell curve, and 85% of people or so are um, average or below average. So you know, that top 15%, those are the ones that you're looking to surround yourself with each and every day. And certainly those are few and far between. And those that maybe have the bigger suitcase, I think they find a way in most cases to emerge into pretty awesome roles in this world.
Being at a smaller school, whether that be anything that money's not an object, let's say. You know, maybe a Division II school, or when you're at a JUCO, um, Utah Valley, I'm sure you have your challenges. Isn't that figuring that stuff out is a little bit of a game and it's a little fun, right? Like you take it. How do I want to say it? Like the budget, you figure out at the end of the year instead of just saying yes to everything. It's like, hey, we turned this program around in this many years, and these were our challenges. But damn, That was fun. It was hard, but it was a blast. Is it more rewarding being successful at a place that you don't have as many resources as, the next place?
Oh, I think it's something our whole athletic department here prides ourselves on. Do more with less, and it's pretty awesome. Our basketball program has won two of the last three conference titles for the regular season, and I look around our women's soccer programs rolling, and yeah, I think it's something where we're strategic. I think our whole department maybe thinks outside the box more than others. I think at the higher tiers of our athletic department, we cut through the bureaucracy and we find solutions. And the reward that you feel in that, oh, it's incredible because some of this is just public information that we are able to find out there that there are schools that we've been able to beat that maybe their budgets are 10 times more than ours.
Hmm.
Not just in our sport. I'm just talking about our whole department where um, the satisfaction in that. There's no doubt it's awesome.
I think what any player, young player, and high school kid, and maybe even a young coach can take from this is you can, when you have challenges in coaching or playing, you can either take that and say, well, I mean, we just don't have, look what they have. Look at the other schools, and look at their training facility and this, that, and the other, and you can use it as an excuse. Or like you guys, you can say, I'm gonna stuff this suitcase full, and we're gonna juice the orange for every little bit out of it that we can, and we're gonna get a solution to the problem instead of making an excuse to why we didn't get it done.
No doubt about that. No question.
It's and I guess this would be the type of human you are, but I think it's so much more rewarding when you build something brick by brick, as they say, or from the very bottom, and you're laying a new foundation, and you've got to fix all these things. How do you decide for you? How did you decide what fix first? Essentially, like you have a array of problems, or
Yeah,
and low hanging fruit here, there, and there. What was the biggest thing? After you got your coaching staff hired, you have that first meeting. It's like, this is what we got to do first.
yeah. There's no doubt that I mean, you said after we get the coaching staff hired, but for me, as I looked at this program, and I just saw a flower ready to bloom. I saw so much potential in the place, and hiring the right coaches was, in my opinion, the most important thing. Now, I had informal agreements and a staff in place before I was ever going to offer the job. That's kind of part of the process, and explaining a vision and having a vision for it. But that in itself was a really important part, getting the right people on board. We aren't sitting here in the SEC with hundreds of thousands of dollars to throw at an assistant coach. And so to find the right people who were also eager and excited about this opportunity was so critical. And I think we really, really have a special staff here. But from there, it's always about the players first, things that impact the players the most. And so we really, really attacked the roster piece. We brought in a lot of new players. And then, once we brought in players that we felt like had the talent to compete at this level, it was a combination of continuing to bring in new classes of players that would allow us to continue to do that, but also develop the players that we now had in our program to try to get them better. And so basically every decision was made and prioritized based on how does it most influence the players that we're going to get and then their development. And so, we've got some bells and whistles, but uh, uh, it's all geared toward being efficient. None of it's used to be fluff. I'd much rather spend that money on something that I feel in my heart will make our players better or allow us to get a better player.
So, and this actually just is a great transition to our next topic of the recruiting landscape these days. Um, but I'll ask, when you were recruiting new players, and I don't mean just to replace, old ones, and do you look at a player and say, this kid is better than our current third baseman, but he's not the player that you You guys probably, I'm assuming 10 to 47, you probably finished last. Do you look at a third baseman and say, this third baseman is a 5 out of 10 finish talent wise, right?
Yeah.
And do you want to recruit that kid, or do you say that kid's not going to win us a conference championship? 9 of those kids are not going to win us a conference championship. We need to recruit even better. Like, is it a slow build of like keep getting better players, or is it like we are going after players that can help us win a conference championship at that talent level?
Yeah, I think that's the focus for us for sure. That's something we always talk about is, if we can't find a player who we feel in our heart in the recruiting process has the potential to help us compete for a conference championship and even a regional championship, um, we're going to scratch and claw and try to expand our network and try to find somebody who can. And it's something where I believe you go out there and you go find as many talented players as you possibly can. You fill in with guys that are tough as nails and are pounding your door down, where maybe they're recruiting you as much as you're recruiting them, and guys who really want to be there. And, at the core of all of those players, I do think that makeup, character is so important. We're always trying to do background checks and call anybody who might have any insight to who this player actually is and get the truth out of what this player's reputation is among his teammates, among his coaches, among his friends, and that's a huge piece of it. I'll also say that I think grades are one of the one of the best indicators of that. I mean, if you can't get a 3.0 um, in high school or junior college, I don't know if you're going to have the intelligence or the work ethic to keep up with what we're trying to do. I mean, it's just that simple. Those are the things that we look into the most, and it's certainly an imperfect science, especially at Utah Valley and our peer institutions where we're scratching and clawing and always trying to find the best fits that we can to help us compete. But that's the beauty in it too.
So, for the people in the back that might not have heard that, Coach Smith says your academics are huge. They matter. And I always tell our guys, you want your academics to open doors for you, not close them. During that recruiting process, you said that you'll reach out to anyone that you can get information on a kid.
Absolutely, and it's always different. Every individual is unique, but it's something where it was a player that came into our program last year and kind of was way under the radar. He committed to us in June of his senior year of high school. He just kind of wrapped up, prom, high school graduation ceremonies were coming up and stuff, and commits to us. Well, I'd seen him play a couple of times. And he just really stood out to me, but it's like, hey, why is nobody else recruiting this guy in his neck of the woods? Is kind of my thought. What's going on here?
What's the catch?
Yeah, and I mean, I just use this as an example. I mean, I was on the phone everywhere, and it happened to be a place I'm really familiar with recruiting wise. And I mean, the more I talked to people, the more the reviews were just incredible about this kid's character. But it was people like the girls' basketball coach at his high school happened to know the women's basketball coach who I had coached with when I was coaching baseball at the junior college, who was a good friend of mine. And those are the kind of connections that you get on the phone. You have an insight like that. That guy has no skin in the game. He's going to shoot me straight. His commitment is, to this shared friend of ours and telling me the truth. And so that's just one example of many where we're trying to find those seeds of separation where maybe we can get a really good review on a player and what their character truly is like.
To reiterate, and I'll do this when you make really good points that we've tried to nail home to the kids in our organization. When you call people, their their motive is the relationship they have with you. So they don't want to lie for a kid because that's going to tarnish their relationship with you. And then the next time you call them, well, you're probably not going to call them. But if you would, you're not really going to trust what they say like you did the first time. So I think kids got to understand that you never know who you are giving an impression to. Coach Smith might not be there at that moment to see you do whatever you're doing, but a friend of a women's basketball coach might have been there, and through two or three other people, this is the story you hear about a player, and that's the difference between saying no thanks or we got to have this kid in our roster. So I love that you made that point and you said that, and that's been a common theme. This is episode 11, so on the first 10, it's been a really common theme of coaches, the relationship aspect, and you never know who's watching, and I think it's so important because I mean it's really probably unfair to a 16-year-old kid to ask them to be. Kids are going to be kids, you know. I mean, one little thing that they do, one little mistake they make can change positively or negatively like their course of their life, but that's just the way it is because you have a job to do. Your job puts food on the table for your family. So you've got decisions to make, and you've got to take the kids that you think are best going to help you for your program. So I love that you said that, and I appreciate that so much. How much do you guys use the transfer portal? Is it you solely want to recruit out of that? Is it when you had a oops and some kid didn't develop, or is it touch and go?
Uh, we use it a lot. We use it a whole lot, and I think we're all trying to figure out exactly how this new landscape is. But the transfer portal is right in the core of it, and it's something in our program we've been beneficiaries of landing some of our best players via the transfer portal. Guys that wanted a fresh start, guys that maybe should have ended up at a place like Utah Valley out of high school and got an opportunity at the Power Five, and understandably took that opportunity, but it just didn't work out, and they ended up landing at our place instead. And it's been a really, really key part to our recruiting, and will continue to be. I think that's a huge piece of what we're in right now.
Do you like the new transfer portal the way it is today and the way it's constructed?
Oh, I don't get to have an opinion on that, so I just try to use it the best that we can to help us achieve our mission to win championships.
Yeah, that's fair. One rule they did change that, from my point of view, that I can speak on is the you can't contact them until August 1st of their junior year.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I can't imagine being in LSU and looking at a 14-year-old kid and trying to predict how he's going to develop. He's already way up here, but you know you need him to go a little higher. So you have to sign that kid because you know if you don't, then I don't know, Alabama's going to, Tennessee's going to, and like you talked about those kids that got an opportunity to go to LSU and maybe didn't pan out because he didn't take that jump when you guys signed him. Well, now the transfer portal offers an ability for him to go play where he should have fit. So I think the transfer portal has been good in that sense. And that rule of August 1st, I think will help you guys and Power Fives miss less, if that makes sense.
Oh, it absolutely will. I mean, you talk about those phone calls with eighth graders and freshmen in high school. I mean, I mean, they weren't even old enough to ask them how driver's ed was going yet. We had to talk about, hey, are you in algebra? Do they have the letters in your math equations yet? How's that going for you? You know, I mean, try having a conversation on the phone with those kids. You know, it was it wasn't fair. It
No,
was,
it's not. It's not as a
but
it's a broken system. It was.
oh, it was completely broken. But as you mentioned, if we didn't do that, we didn't pursue the top players in the country at LSU, and they went somewhere else. Hey, we were out of luck. So it was a reality of it for those top tier programs at the time. And I do think for everybody involved, that August 1st date, heading into your junior year, is a good time for everything. And I think that's a good adjustment by the system.
It's you can never blame Power Fives. I mean, I lump Power Fives in. I have no issue with Power Fives, but they were mostly signing the younger kids. But you can never blame them because you had to oversign, because if that kid was already thrown 90 at 14 years old, went up to 98 by the time he graduated, he's going to get drafted. So if that happens and you get a couple other kids that don't develop through high school, well then you're left with two or three kids in that recruiting class, and that's never going to work. So you had to sign more guys. So while I didn't like the way the system was, I completely understood it, and I can't imagine the stress it put on coaches. I mean, I think most college coaches are good dudes, and they want to do the right thing, and they would love to recruit this many players, this many, and however many those kids we recruit, they're all going to stay at my school for 4 years. We're going to develop them on and off the field. They're going to graduate with their degree, and then if they don't get drafted, they're going to go have successful careers. But in reality, it doesn't work like that always. What are you looking for in a kid and a recruit out of high school?
Recruit out of high school is a really interesting thing right now. It's something where the traditional model for a college player coming in as a true freshman is a lot of adversity. It's just the first time you're really being challenged by people that are significantly older than you. I always use this example. Hey, when you were a freshman in high school, how did that go for you? And for most players, when they were freshmen in high school, they were on the JV team or, they were the backup. And um, I say, well, okay, well, now you're the freshman in college. It's the same age gap, if not more, because there's fifth and sixth year guys. And the only difference is that now instead of it being your high school team, it's like an all-state team because it's Division I baseball. The talent level, it's the cream of the crop, and it's something where, gosh, that adversity, that learning curve, it's so steep. It's the biggest jump in all of baseball that people make. Going from college baseball to professional baseball, you're doing that with peers. Going from, even if you sign out of high school, you go into baseball at the professional level and you play against a bunch of other 18 and 19-year-olds. Well, going into the freshman year of college baseball, you're getting dumped into an environment that's dominated by 21, 22, 23 year olds. Add on top of that, for the first time in your life, probably, you're away from home. You're figuring out how to live in a dorm or an apartment and feed yourself, and new
Yeah.
classes, and, you know, figuring out all these new social norms of what a college life is like. The transition period is incredible. So, recruiting a high school player to come in as a true freshman, we got to have confidence that that player is incredibly mature, um, and can handle all the stresses that are going to come along with college, handle that adversity. The reality is that most college freshmen are not everyday players. The average college hitter is probably getting somewhere between 25 and 50 at bats in his freshman year on average. Um, pitchers probably getting somewhere between 5 and 15 innings that year, and that's not very many. And how are you going to do with that? Because if you're going to leave after that freshman year, after a standard year, that's not worth our time investment. That's not worth the scholarship investment. It's not worth the sandwiches we're feeding you. Okay. And so it's something where we got to have somebody we have total confidence. Well, first of all, their ability is good enough to eventually be an impact player for us, but also their character, their grit, their commitment to want to go through this process where, hey, again, let's go back to the bell curve. Most of the freshmen we're going to bring in are going to have very limited opportunity in their first year. By their sophomore year, that opportunity hopefully increases for them. That's the path we all want them to be on. And then their junior year, hopefully they're no longer running around like chickens with their head cut off. They're taking on a little bit of a leadership role. They've been through this dance a few times, and they're an impact guy for you. That's kind of the traditional model of what the average college baseball experience looks like. So it is an interesting thing. We got to have, if we're going to invest a scholarship, if we're going to invest a ton of time into a high school recruit, we got to have a lot of belief that that player is going to be good enough to be that impact player in our program by his junior year. Otherwise, we're going to go get a transfer who can be that impact player and has already weathered some of these storms of college baseball, who knows what it's like. We have a lot better look at what that person's going to be like.
It's the gap you talk about between an 18-year-old kid when they first get to your program and what they are when they're 22, 23. as seniors, the gap is insane. It's beautiful seeing a kid develop, but
That's why you're good as a coach.
it's
The
yeah, it's
best.
uh, when you take your seniors out after they graduate and you have like the tell all, not dinner and all that, like hearing the stories about them as freshmen and seeing who they are as 22, 23 years, that like you said, that's why you do it. It's beautiful. But it's also it's nerve-wracking as a coach because like you mentioned, you now have to get up yourself and get yourself to weights in the morning if you have morning classes. You've got to eat. You've got to make sure your grades are intact. And all of this is on your own. Like you don't have your mom's not there, your dad's not there to say you probably should go work out today, or you probably should do this, or you should probably turn the video games off and you probably need to study. And that's where the most slip ups happen is that first year. If you get through that first year, usually you're pretty good. Your retention rate skyrockets, but that's always the concerning one. And you listen to a lot of coaches that say similar things that you did, where it's easier to bring in a kid that's already gone through that for a year, and you don't essentially have to worry about that as much. So I think that's important for a lot of guys to hear. If you're going to come out of high school and play at a high level at Division 1, for you guys, and I'm sure most would agree, they have to check off all those boxes. Like any red flags are glaring, like the maturity issue and all that. Like that's just going to turn you guys away because you don't want to take a chance on that kid. Like it's not worth taking a chance. I guess I should frame it is kind of what you're saying.
Absolutely. Oh, there's no doubt about that. And it's a big pool out there of players. And I've found so often what separates players at the college level is those who do have the maturity to navigate through class and study hall and weights and everything that's auxiliary from just being on the field. Um, that maturity just allows them to develop and grow into the level of this game, this pace of this game, so much faster than the guy who doesn't have that. But those are the ones that survive and thrive at this level. So it's such an important thing for us to go seek that out in the recruiting process. And it's always about question number one that I have when I'm looking at a player or one of our assistants is working on a player is okay. Is he gonna be able to handle it? What's his makeup like? Because this game it's tough. It's a challenge. There's 305 schools all compete for the same thing, and if you want to be special, you got to emerge and do things that are different than others. So finding those kind of players that want to be a part of something special, something elite, something different. That's what we're looking for.
Hitting wise, let's transition a little bit to the development of hitters and how you go about developing an 18-year-old to a 22-year-old. What do, what do you guys do differently, or what are some of your big beliefs in developing a championship winning hitter, if you will?
I think there's
That's a
an
loaded
individual.
question. I
Yeah, there's
understand
an
that.
individual approach for every hitter. Every hitter is so different, and they have to be coached accordingly. But the universal truths are all there as well. And I think some of the biggest things that we work on as a program are putting our hitters in environments each and every day to try to prepare them as close as possible to the game. And I think some of the things that we'll work on strength, bat speed, it's pinnacle. You talk about that difference between the 18-year-old and the 21 to 23-year-old who is in college baseball. So often that separation starts and finishes with their strength. Hey, how can we improve that in the weight room? We do some things that always trying to get as good as we can, use the science that's available to us. I think we've seen what the pitching side has done over the last 15 years, where you've got average major league fastballs at 95 miles an hour now. Well, how can we do similar stuff for the bat speed? There's stuff out there I think that can really help players. So that's a big thing we're working on. Philosophically, we talk about it with our hitters all the time. We're trying to treat it like it's a 3-0 pitch and hit it right past the pitcher's ear. And be on time for that fastball and turn it right back around and try to stay as committed to that plan as you can. Uh, there's some mechanical things we'll work on. Equally as important to me, I
Mhm.
want our guys to be loose, athletic. I don't want the tin man. I don't want a guy thinking he's got to be a robot out there mechanically. There's a lot of different ways to swing the bat, and I want guys swinging fast, aggressive, swinging hard, trying to do some damage up there at the plate.
I love that you said do some damage. That's kind of our the thing in ATL is hitting wise. We want to swing with intent and swing to do damage. And like you said, treat everything like it's a 3-0 fastball. It is so true. I had one of my best friends. He's with the Yankees now, but he always talks about like the lowest hanging fruit that you can get for a kid is just talking about swinging hard.
Mhm.
Don't swing like kids want to put the ball in play, and sometimes I think they lose the fact that like you have to swing hard to do damage. But if you don't train that way, it's not going to happen that way. For you guys, how much do you look at exit velocity? How do you have a hit track? So you got Rapsodo. What are you kind of measuring that stuff with?
Yeah, we have TrackMan on our field now, which is great. And then
Oh,
we also in our batting cages, and sometimes we'll pull this out on the field. It's just kind of like the old carnival style speed pitch gun, and we put the radar gun up there, and there's a little board that displays the exit velocity. And I tell you, you'll see 22-year-old kids act like 8-year-olds, and I love it. It's competition.
it's the
It
best.
goes back to the caveman era where, hey, if you hit a ball 98 miles an hour, I want to hit it 99, and we post that up in our hitters board in our locker room, max exit velo for the whole fall. And guys know, uh, what their personal record is. Guys know where that stands among all of the hitters. And I think there's an innate competitor in all of us where that's one of the things that we really try to measure because to me, that's the mark of a good hitter for sure. But equally as important, it's a nice final output number for all the work that you're putting in the weight room, all the work that you're putting in with some of the other stuff that we do on the bat speed training and training the functionality of the turn and the swing. And so that's a number we're chasing all the time for our guys individually. I want them to strive to get that extra mile an hour. It's a cool thing when that pops up on the board and they get fired up in the middle of a batting practice round throughout our fall.
Uh, Before we started the travel organization, me and the head guy of the travel org, he was the head coach at Oglethorpe University. Now was his assistant, and we had the velo board. We weren't fortunate enough to have a hit track, so we just had the stalker radar gun, which presents
Yep.
its own challenges of when you're trying to get max exit velo. It's got to be like, well, you pulled that one, like you got to hit it up the middle. It's
Yeah.
difficult, but the competition you can't put a number on how much that changes a program where you have 15 or 16 hitters that want to beat each other day in and day out, and what that will do for the ceiling of your program by just having competition. And to go back to something you said, where you want to challenge a guy, you want to make it as essentially game like as possible. We did this at Oglethorpe. We do this with our traveling guys. We're currently in winter hitting, so we will start off fairly easy, like 8 rotations in the 2 Rapsodo cages. We'll start off fairly easy, where we have you know right-handed fastball machines, pretty easy. But as we build through the fall, we'll start doing the short machine. We'll start doing 2 different machines. One's a curveball, one's a fastball, and you act like you're going to put both in. And you only drop one in there and it could be very frustrating. But what you try to get kids to understand is taking 100 swings off of a tee is only going to do so much for you, right? Because how many times are you going to hit a stationary ball in a game?
Right.
You have to train hard and you got to fail to get better. It's a hard thing for the kids to understand, and I think that relationship you build with them allows them to trust that. Um, for your guys, what are some exit velos you have for your top? What are your top 4 or 5, and maybe what's an average, just to give kids an idea?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand these are all maximum exit velos, and,
Right.
and the reality is that hey, it's not always just how hard you hit it; it's how often can you hit it hard too.
The
You
the,
know,
the average exit velo, I would even argue, is probably more important than the max.
absolutely, no, there's no doubt about that. And so um, that's a big important wrinkle to add into this. But we are chasing the max exit velo as far as posting it, recording it, and everything else often in our program. So I think we've got 3 guys that are all tied at 105 right now is the top for the fall. And I think we had 11 guys. I think we have 18 hitters or something like that right now in our program, and 11 of them reached the 100 club, which is kind of that magical, 3-digit number that pops up there. And I would also say that, you mentioned the challenges of the stalker gun. Um, as much as I love it, it is limited because we'll roll out the only ones that we record are from the stalker. When we roll out the TrackMan at times, we've had some that have been significantly higher than that because, as you mentioned, hey, the balls that pull is pulled or the ball that maybe goes up into the air a little bit more, you don't get a true reading on that. But hey, you hit that high line drive past that pitcher, which is what we're striving for as kind of our base defense, I say, as a hitter.
Mm-hmm.
In football, high school football, I'll never forget, hey, we had our base defense, right? Probably 90% of the time, that's what we ran. Well, as a hitter, 90% of the time, we just want to be thinking soft focus on hitting that line drive right past that pitcher's ear, right? And that ball right there is the one that records the highest exit velocity.
Yes, it
So
does. Yes,
it's
it
probably
does.
not a perfect measurement, but it is a true number for something that we're striving to do, which is hit that ball really hard right at the middle of the field.
As a coach, developing hitters, not just one hitter, but like your whole staff of hitters, if you will. How do you balance, like you said, line drive? Like when kids hear line drive up the middle, how do you balance and create a? I don't want to say old school. I don't want to say old school hitter versus new school hitter, but being able to lay a bunt down, being able to execute a hit and run, being
Yeah.
able to, I, when it's 0-2, just that grit and determination. How do you balance that with, okay, now it's 2-0, we want you to swing and do damage, and we would love a gap shot double? You know what I mean? How do you balance the two different philosophies, if you will?
Yeah,
Because you got to do both. You got to be able to, you know,
for sure. Um, we we work on those scenarios a lot during our skill sessions, especially during our cage group, during our team practice. We'll put those scenarios in a lot and give those guys a lot of kind of simulated game experience. And it's crazy. We play in a league where um, offense is key, and
mm-hmm.
you know if you're going to win games come back end of our conference play, you feel like you got to score 10 runs to win the ball game. And it's a unique brand of baseball for myself, for sure. I'm used to, hey, pitch and defend and score enough that you win the ball game. And this is totally the opposite of that to a certain extent. So I share that to say we've only sacrificed bunted 14 times according to the stat sheet over 2 seasons,
Good,
right?
good,
But with that said, um, if you dive in on Synergy or True Media or if you watch us play, we bunted numerous times, and the bunts are much more a philosophy of, hey, we're going to bunt, and it might be a situation where it goes down as a sacrifice in the stat sheet, but we're bunting with every intention to get on first base. And so, that's something we spend a lot of time practicing on. We demand that our players spend time practicing on their own with that because we want to be able to get that done in a situation where we feel like, hey, if we bunt right here, an average bunt is going to give us a 40% chance to reach first base, right? 40% chance. Hey, that's a 400 hitter right there. And
yeah.
so we want to be really good in that scenario. So, you talk about all those situations that you bring up. We try to work on them in different ways. Those are some of the examples of how we work on them. And, our, again, with all that said, probably um, about 70% of the pitches you see are going to be what we call attack counts. There's less than two strikes on you. You're not bunting. You're not thinking situationally. Let's hit that ball as hard as you can right past that pitcher's ear. Great things are going to happen.
We've learned through analytics and what like outs are your most precious thing. So we rarely bunted Oglethorpe when we were there. And moving to the 16, 17-year-old traveling teams that I coached when I left Oglethorpe, it's that they can bunt more and you're going to be more successful because those kids are probably going to make more errors.
Yep.
And yes, I want to win games. I'm probably the most competitive person on the field at that time, but also I know if I make that kid bunt 15 times a summer, that's 15 at bats they're losing out on, and we're huge in development, and everyone and their brother says that. But if it's the seventh inning and there's guys on first and second with no outs and you're down by a run, if that kid's got a bunt because I make him bunt there, well, he loses the experience of hitting in that situation where there's more pressure in there. And if we are going to bunt, which I put on 0 signs in my last 3 years or I put on 0 bunt signs in the last 3 years. It's going to be on their own, but I want them to understand like you're bunting for a base hit down the third baseline, just fair, just foul. If you get it there, it's bases loaded, no outs. If the kid comes up, makes a great play, it still benefits the team. But it gave us a shot. Like you said, there's probably a 40% chance that he's going to be safe anyways on a
Mhm.
hit. That's we have such similar mindsets in that. Um, it's is it hard to? It's probably not hard for your kids to buy into your offensive philosophy. Do you have guys that want to push back?
I think every coach experiences that in their career. I don't care what sport you're playing, coaching, what position you're in charge of. That's part of the dynamic. And I think navigating that dynamic through conversation, through examples, maybe a little give, uh, to the individual if they're dead set on a plan. I think that's all part of coaching. In fact, I'd say that's one of the big areas where um, average coaches are separated from great coaches is the ability to maybe connect with that player who doesn't fully understand, doesn't fully buy in, maybe isn't fully executing, and you have a conversation with them and it just hasn't clicked with them yet for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, and you got to explain it in a little bit different way to that individual. That's the fun part. That's the fun part of understanding. Hey, how do we get the most out of this player? Because again, I think you asked me 10 minutes ago. Hey, what's the philosophy? What's the key to hitting? And I think the first thing I said is, hey, every individual, it's a
Oh
different
yeah,
animal.
oh yeah.
And that's the fun part of it is getting to understand that person as a hitter and somehow, some way, try to get them to be the best version of themselves.
Through doing these, like I said, it's so interesting. All the different coaches that come on here, and some of them I've known, and they're some of my best friends in coaching, and some people are through recommendations, and hey, this guy would love to come, whatever, and it's interesting like how in depth coaches want to go with each different process or with their craft, and it's that's been the main thing is you you have to have your philosophies and what you believe and how you want to go about it, but every kid is going to be different and how you train them is going to be different. And I think you mentioned like you have your main like you have a few things that you really care about like mechanically I guess like what are your main points mechanically that you talk about? And again, with the understanding that every kid is going to be different, You don't want to make robots, but
Yeah.
in a swing, what are the most important parts of that swing for you?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is getting into, we call it the power position. There's a lot of different words out there for it. We could line up 100 Hall of Famers from every generation of professional baseball, and you're going to get 100 different stances. I think that's something that's um, kind of unique, and you're going to see a little bit different bat paths out of a lot of guys too. But one thing that's pretty incredible, and I've got a couple of graphics on it, on my phone and that sort of thing. Is, I mean, I've got graphics where you're looking at Ken Griffey Jr. and Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and Otani, and they all get to this position upon stride. I'm sorry, stance, and then they load with the stride and hand motion where they're about shoulder width apart with their feet, slight bend in their knees. Their hands are all pretty close to 6 inches to a foot away from their ear. Their bat is kind of knob to the knee of the catcher. I mean, the universal power position is incredible. And it's funny. I was just at the Dominican Republic for the last 6 days. I got back last night, and there was this guy in this park right in the middle of Santo Domingo, and I sat out here and watched him for like 4 hours. Okay, and he's one of these guys, these street performers, where he had a little gold platform and it had a little explanation about who he was, but he was in this costume where everything was painted like a shiny gold, including his face. He looked like a statue, and that's what he was designed to do. And so he's sitting there and he's in this power position where it's like a hitter who just got down with his foot, but he's trying to look like a statue, and person after person would come up and read the plaque, every 5 minutes or so. And he'd be standing there and they're getting intense and reading the plaque and read the plaque. And then he'd jump out there and scare him. It was great. I mean, it was just awesome, just a practical joker type of the thing. But it was so cool because, hey, there's this power position right here where he was able to hold this power position literally for about 3 hours and 58 minutes of a 4 hour span that I watched him, just to go make bucks as a street performer. And every great hitter is in that position over and over and over again. And from there, it's the turn of the body. It's loading into that backside, and trying to create as much explosion as you can with that turn of the body, having that bat to ball skill, that hand eye coordination to have your barrel get to the ball instead of, that if you're a 16th of an inch off, it's a huge difference as a hitter. And
Yeah.
so, we're talking about microseconds, we're talking about micro inches of being, on that ball often, a lot. And so I think those are the things that we focus on the most on the mechanics side, is getting to that power position and then exploding out of that power position through the middle of the field.
When you talk about the power position, is it before the swing is start? I don't want to say launched, but before the swing goes forward or is launched, or the hips, like we like to say, like the hips go first and you create that separation, but your power position is before that.
Is before that, yeah, it's kind of right when the foot is kind of landing on the ground, um, and the hands have not started yet.
Like the
Yep.
counter rotations there.
Yep, and the
And
foot's down. Um, Push pause on that video recorder, and you get an incredible graphic. And I could send you the graphic when we get off here of all
if you
these hits
if you
that
do, what I can do is, for the listeners won't be able to listen or obviously see that, but the for the YouTube portion of it, I'll be able to flash those graphics if
yeah,
you want to share them on screen, and basically they'll come up as you're talking about that.
awesome.
So that'd be great. I'd love that.
You know, I,
Be,
I'll
be,
send those right over.
because how you explained the power position is a lot of the similar stuff that we talk about in our organization, but just in a different way. And like that you mentioned, some players, they're not really understanding, or it's not, they're not able to get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you know another way to say that, it may click for them.
Mhm.
So I think, like you talked about suitcases, I think my favorite analogy is like a toolbox. And as a coach, you want to have as many tools in that toolbox as possible. And sometimes those tools are going to do the same thing, but they're a different size. And by that, what I mean is we're saying the same thing, but just in a different way. And a kid is able to pick up on one way, but for whatever reason, another way, even though it's the same thing, they just don't. It doesn't resonate with them. So
Right.
yeah, if you can send me those, I love hearing all about that, and like having you on today when Chico first reached out. I love again. I'm a sucker for building something from the ground up on your own. So like initially, right when you said the resource using getting the most out of your resources, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, because I can't wait just to pick your brain on, well, how did you decide that you wanted a new locker room instead of a fourth track man or whatever it is, because that stuff is so interesting to me, because I also know how hard it is to around a college program, and not only just turn one around, maintain success. Because once you get good, you have expectations, and that's a whole nother world of, well, now you're expected to be this. So when you don't, even though what you did is good, it's not up here. Like I Nick Saban, the expectations at Alabama. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
criminal what is considered a failure by fans at this point. But when he first took over, it was like, they're rejoicing if they would have been the first team out of the college playoffs. But now,
Right.
you know what I mean? So that stuff is just, I love that you went down that path, and I think maybe it resonates with me because when we were at Oglethorpe, I mean, one, it's Division 3 level, and so we're gonna have less resources than a lot of even D1s, but we also at that level we had minimal resources compared to a lot of other schools. So like that stuff's very interesting to me, and I appreciate that. Um, and some advice for a youth baseball player. It doesn't even have to be. I put hitter on here. It doesn't have to be a hitter. A kid that's 13 to 15 years old. What advice do you have for him in general?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. It could be specific. Take that where you want. Just something that our younger ages can just take with them.
Yeah. Um, and I think this would be something that goes hand in hand with their parents, because at that age, there's certainly a link that's still very strong there, important and strong there. But I think that we're obviously in an era, in a world where the baseball world at that age is so involved with tournaments, showcases, rankings, and there's a great advantage in some of that. I mean, let me tell you, as a college coach, what that brings us in value, it's a lot. And I appreciate that side of it. I really do. But at the same time, so often I see people lose the lessons that the sport can teach you. And so often I see people maybe playing the game for the wrong reasons. And I think that um, could go into all those reasons. I think it just tears me apart. It's painful. I see this dynamic sometimes where I feel like maybe the parents want it more for the players than the players want it. The players are playing to appease the parents. When I'm at a high school showcase type tournament, or even a high school game, and that hurts me. And I say all that with the end point to be, as a ball player, I think it's so important that you play for the love of the game and the love of your team. And I think that as a parent, you should look and be sure that your first priority is that your son is playing for the love of the game and playing for the love of the team. Because if those things aren't there for a player, I'm not saying, hey, he had a bad weekend, so he's in a bad mood and all of a sudden he hates baseball, so you quit. It's not that. I'm saying over a period of time, because this game can really crush you over the course of the short term for sure. It's part of the beauty is the ups and downs of this ball game. But um, you know, it's easy to see sometimes where there's players that are not playing for the love of the game, and Um, it is. As a college coach, it hurts me for those players. You know, maybe they could use their gifts somewhere else where their heart truly is. I don't know if that's cooking or hiking or something else. You know, football, all those different things out there. And I think when you lose sight of that part of it, you lose any ability to ever be great at the game. That's for sure. So play for the love of the game. I think so much of that can be found in the love of your team and a love of trying to find victory and the camaraderie that you have in that process. There's so much there.
I think all baseball players and coaches, the ones that play a long time, and by a long time I don't mean in the pros. Um, we all have us. I don't really know what to call it, and maybe I'll one day I'll figure something out that's brilliant. It's something inside of us that we love the suck. Like sometimes baseball sucks, and up there's so much failure. It's almost rather depressing, like how much failure there is. But baseball players don't walk around every day thinking, oh, I mean, all I got to do is be 3 of 10. You know what I mean? Like the maybe the best word for it is the resilience of a baseball player and of a baseball coach is, we're told no seven times straight, but we know if we get a yes the next 3 times, we're successful. You
Yeah,
know, and sometimes it's more than 7 times. Sometimes we're in a slump and it's 3 out of 50. You know what I mean? But like we just keep showing up, and the ones that don't obviously are the ones that leave the game early and they don't love it. But the guys that truly love baseball, and especially coaches, are some of the most resilient people, and I think it's just something we have in here, because if not, you can't play baseball
no doubt.
or you're
It's the
just miserable all the time.
Yep, no doubt.
um when Kyle Farmer came on, he talked about just loving the game. Like, yeah, his the one little edit clip I made of him, one of them was, I think I asked him, like, were there people more talented than you that didn't make it? Which I'm been in baseball a while. Like, I know the answer to that question, but you know, and he said he just talked about the guys in the minor leagues. It it wasn't a talent thing to be the ones that make it out of the minor leagues or the ones that don't leave early. You just have to love baseball. Like, if you don't love baseball, you're not going to make it, because like how difficult minor leagues were, where you're making $700 every 2 weeks, $1,000 every 2 weeks, and it's
You wouldn't wish the lifestyle on anybody in that sense.
I can't
Rough.
imagine. I can't imagine. And like, I do you look? I guess I just do you look back at your time at like a junior college? And again, this is probably going to be a stereotypical question, but you hear about the guys from junior college, how big of grinders they are, because you're taking 12 passenger vans everywhere. You are eating peanut butter jellies because the funding isn't great, and there's not as many rules on how often you can practice and you train. Like, do you look back at your time on that, and like, what do you take from going and coaching at a junior college?
It was my favorite time coaching in my life. It was not even
Really?
close. Um, I absolutely loved it. The players were uh, there for all the right reasons. There were so little limited distractions for the players. It was such a cool experience, and I thought it was so cool. Every player had that dream of winning championships, and a lot of the players had that dream of getting a Division 1 opportunity. And so when those things came true, it was so cool to see those players get that yeah, fulfillment. And I think at the junior college level, there was an innocence about it. There was a beauty about it where it was incredibly competitive, but at the same time, you were able to coach for the reasons that were truly in your heart, maybe more than at any other level. And um, that combination for me, gosh, it was just amazing. So those days, I think about them a lot. It was something where our resources just were declining so much, as is the case at so many junior colleges. I just couldn't stay at that level anymore to support a family and things that were changing in my life. And I've had an unbelievable experience since. Don't get me wrong, but I absolutely love that level and everything about it that you just mentioned too. Of hey, we were the grounds crew, we were the academic coordinator, we were um, the travel coordinators. It's allowed me to be so familiar with so many components of a program that you come to a place like Utah Valley from LSU, you're not sitting there and saying, well, hey, why is this equipment not getting sorted out? Why is that not getting done? You say, gosh, we got it pretty good here because I know what it's like at the junior college level. We never had that. And it was a really cool experience.
I First of all, either you're one of the most genuine coaches and human beings out there, or you do really, really great on a podcast, or both. But I love that that was your answer, because it would have been, it's easy to say, well, of course, my time at LSU, like I didn't have to I didn't have to do laundry. I didn't have to, where there was probably times where you either were doing the laundry at the junior college, or you know, you were making sure your team did it. But I don't think people understand how many different hats you wear at a lower level. And it's funny that you hear stories, and I've heard them before, where coaches from bigger schools will come in, and all that stuff that you mentioned, they're, they're like, oh, we don't have this, or oh, who do I talk to about renting a car for me this weekend to go recruiting, or who do I, oh, who does the laundry here, or where are the GAs for this? And there's something beautiful about when you have to do all of that stuff yourself. And I guess I would attribute that's like when we were at Oglethorpe, we did the whole field ourselves all the time, cut the grass, edge it, all of that. But for a Division 3 program, and with ryegrass, we had a beautiful field. Our playing surface was top notch. Not even just for a D3 school. I mean, we were one of the best in the state of Georgia, but we did all that.
Yep.
And when we took the field on game day in the spring, and you're out there in the national anthem, and the sun is shining, so you got the nice contrast, like that was the I mean, I say that was the best part of my day. Obviously, winning ball games was, but like the 6 seconds of pride and the feeling you get when look what look what we did. You know what I mean? And then it goes all the way down to your players, where they buy into, hey, when we exit the dugout, we don't use this middle rail. We go around the outsides. That way you don't tear the grass up. And it's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I love that
Yeah.
that was this whole podcast. I feel like you've had the most genuine answers about being at a small school like a JUCO. You can coach for the not the right reasons, but like you want to coach because you love seeing kids go Division 1 from a JUCO, and you love seeing kids grow and mature to what they're going to be, and that's the beauty of it. And I think a lot of coaches do lose sight of that, of why we're doing this, and why how much we love baseball and seeing kids grow. So I mean, I really appreciate a lot of those answers today, or just you touching on those.
Yeah.
Um, I can't imagine how different LSU is than Utah Valley. Where in 10 years, I don't know if I can ask you like where you want to be in 10 years, but I don't want you to have to say that on a podcast. But what's the end goal? Do you want to stay at a non-power 5 Division 1 forever? Would do you want to go back? Like, was the SEC like? Do you want to build a program at the highest level one day? Like, what is? And
Yeah.
you can answer that off recording. I could take that out, but
No, no.
just
I mean, I'm
genuinely
very
curious.
transparent with my dreams, and you know, I share them with our administration here all the time, and I share them with any recruit that asks a question. And you know, I've got really big dreams. There's no doubt about that.
Hmm.
And you know, I love the quest of trying to figure out how good you can be, how you can make decisions here or there that might seem small, that might be big, that might be totally different than how anybody else in the whole industry is doing it, and see how those results come out. I love that. I love that challenge to be the best you could possibly be every single day. And so, you know, I got dreams. I talk about this with our team of going to Omaha. I want to coach in Omaha one day, but um, you know, I always think back to last season and hey, Oral Roberts got there. Why can't Utah Valley get there? And you know, I wanted to just keep winning here.
Hmm.
That's what you control in the short term. I see incredible growth in this university. I hope this university keeps just growing. You know, a side note to this question: 20 years ago, Utah Valley was a junior college baseball program, only school in the history of NCAA Division One to literally go overnight from the junior college level to the Division One level. And
Wow.
so, really, our athletic department is still in its infancy and growing like an infant into a adolescent. And it's been a great place, great energy. It's fun to see that process. I would love to grow our program at the same rate that our school and athletic department are growing, quite frankly. And
Hmm.
you know, if we keep doing that together, um, shoot, that really the sky is the limit. And maybe that's just dreaming too big in a lot of people's eyes, but I'm going to keep dreaming that way until I see a reason that it can't happen. And you know, I love it here, and I just love coaching. And by all means, I do want to coach in Omaha one day. So I hope that dream can get, you know, realized.
Your next coaching stop, do you want it to be something that you have to build up from the ground level again, or do you want to, you know, come into something that's you're already like is a well-oiled machine, and Coach Smith has just got to keep it on the tracks?
Yeah.
I guess you don't have to say your next stop, but
Yeah.
like,
No, I just enjoy every day. This is going to sound really cliche in coach talk, and some of it might be, but I really try hard not to think about that
yeah,
because, you know, if you think about this, that, or the other, and the next stop, it just gets in the way of what you got right in front of you. And I got a
right,
really good thing here. I mean,
yeah,
I shared with you probably 5 times now on this podcast how much I appreciate our administration and the growth
yeah,
of this school and the resources that we do have here. I guess deep in my heart of hearts, there'd be a dream that we could grow this place into like what Gonzaga basketball has done.
yeah.
Maybe
That's
that's
awesome.
just wild and crazy to people, but you know, I think that kind of is a little bit of both of what you're saying. Hey, we came in and inherited a program that had won 10 games only the year before, over
Right.
a 5 year span from 17 to 21. No Division One team in the country lost more games than Utah Valley, and that's where we were. What if we could build this thing into something where it's like, hey, I remember, you know, my dad played baseball and basketball at Gonzaga. As a kid, I knew who Gonzaga was in '92 before they'd ever even been to an NCAA tournament game, you know, and why can't we be that here? I guess that's the way my mind thinks the most these days, and that's how I try to tick. And hey, you know what? I'm gonna always keep my mind open to other opportunities out there.
Of
And if
course.
there's a get rich quick slash a path to Omaha that
Those don't
maybe
exist.
is really really fluid, I'm certainly going to consider that. No doubt about that.
Yeah. Um. I love like I love. That's a great answer, and Utah Valley, you want to go to Omaha, and not just one time. Like, obviously Gonzaga basketball is there year in and year out. You want to build something there that It's you guys just don't go one time. You guys are a powerhouse, and I love that answer. I did not mean to put you on the spot, or I wasn't trying to get get you to say something that you didn't want to or anything. But just genuinely curious, about guys' paths, and I I don't know why I always find that so interesting and kind of where they want to go, and I there's no get rich quick schemes like this doesn't happen. There's no Bitcoin of college baseball. So I what you've done there in the short amount of time is unreal. And I don't think people understand. You've mentioned administration 5 times, 6 times now. I get why you mentioned administration 6 times because people don't understand that if you go to a school that's 10-47 and you don't have good administration, you could have the biggest Louis Vuitton suitcase in the world. You can't turn that around. You have to have the administrative support, and they have to support your goal and what you want to do. So you don't ever have to apologize for mentioning how good your administration is because that's everything. You can only do so much. You know what I mean? Coach Prime with his luggage and all that can't even turn around without good administration. But Coach, I think that's all the questions I've got today. Enough bumbling, stumbling around, and asking you, where you want to go and what you want to do, and I've said it, but I'll say it again. Like I appreciate how real you were with a lot of those answers, and I genuinely believe them and believe you when you say that like you're there coaching for the right reasons, and that's what you love about it. And I think a lot of baseball coaches just or coaches in general will just tell you what you want to hear or what sounds good, but like I don't know, you sold me. If I was a 6'5" big old donkey first baseman, Utah Valley would I'd be there. So um again, I appreciate how genuine you were. And last thing I got is we do a lightning round.
Okay.
It's real quick questions that don't matter, but they've become some of people's favorite, I guess, part of the interview. So, do you put pineapple on pizza?
Oh, absolutely. First choice.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Pitching duel or offensive clinic?
Offensive clinic.
What's the best sunflower seed flavor?
Original.
What about Gatorade flavor?
I'm gonna go blue.
I appreciate when guys don't give me the actual flavor and they give me a color.
Yeah.
I gotta think for a second when they like spit out the flavor. They're
It's,
like,
it's the light blue one.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
I don't even know the name of it, but
It's like an art. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
per,
art accepted.
yep. Color is way better. Everyone knows color. It's easy. You can see it. Are you pro or anti shift?
Oh, pro shit.
What's your favorite MLB ballpark?
I'm gonna stay with Safeco Field, now called T-Mobile Park.
Big Green Monster or Chicago Ivy?
Green Monster.
Where did you grow up, by the way? Where are you?
Seattle area. Olympia, Washington.
Oh, you're a West Coast guy.
Yeah.
Day or night games?
Night games.
Who's your favorite baseball player?
I'm gonna go with Ted Williams.
Everybody gives me someone that's not playing baseball anymore. I find I find that so interesting that guys don't say current players. I thought you were gonna say Ken Griffey.
Mm.
Um,
He's up there. I was at the game that he hit his first big league home run. I was 5 years old. Pretty lucky as a kid growing up in Seattle in the '90s. Let me tell you, Griffey,
Yeah.
Randy Johnson, Ichiro, Edgar Martinez, 4 players you can make the argument were the best at their position of all time. Throw an A-Rod in there, that's 5.
I feel like you've made that argument with people. You've had that
I have,
argument with people in the
I have,
past.
yep.
I remember listening to a Mariano Rivera interview, and he mentioned someone asked him like who the hardest player to get out was, and he mentioned Edgar Martinez because every time he threw that cutter, Edgar would just put a barrel on it and go the other way.
Hmm.
Um, Randy was electric, huh?
He was electric. I mean, every 5th day on some really bad teams, you have something to look forward to because he might throw a no-hitter.
I mean, just but and Ken Griffey Jr. has got this most aesthetically pleasing swing ever. Here's a question. This is not on my lightning round question. We've finished those, but side note: why do lefties have such a sweeter looking swing than righties? And
Right?
you might not agree with that.
Oh, I totally agree with it. I was a left-handed hitter, so I completely agree with you.
Okay,
I think it has to do
why?
with, well, the destination after hitting the ball is first base, and so they can naturally flow to where they're headed to next with their swing. I think that's one of the biggest contributing factors of it. And the next thing is that they didn't grow up with getting right on right sliders like right-handed hitters did. I mean, how many lefties through little league, through high school, through college baseball really have a breaking ball that makes you really force yourself to stay in there when you're a left on left hitter? There's just not that many. And so righties have to deal with that a lot more with so many more right-handed pitchers having good breaking stuff. So I think those are the biggest reasons.
I've had this discussion with people many times, and I think that's the answer I always come up with. The first thing you said was it's something about they're already closer to first base, and I never thought about they don't have to deal with right-handed sliders because there's not many lefties out there. Uh, we last night at our indoor winter hitting with our team, we were doing um, left-handed fastballs and left-handed breaking balls, which it's a pitching machine. So all we do is just we always angle our machines. So many times people will put it straight on, but if you we angle it, so we had we've got skinnier cages, so we had the pitching machine on the left side spitting out left-handed breaking balls, and for our 13 and 14s, my gosh, it's the same kids will tattoo right-handed breaking balls, but they get left-handed ones, and we were awful last night. Like it looked like there was kids ready to quit baseball. But I just think, like you said, you just don't see many, especially at that age, like left-handed breaking balls. But that's just a funny little, I guess.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. It's a real thing, no doubt.
Ted Williams, huh?
Yeah, pretty amazing.
The
Such a good hitter.
so I mean, obviously, I mean that's one of the best baseball books
Oh, yeah.
ever. So, coach, that's all I got. Do you got anything that you need to plug? Like, do you guys have camps coming up? Are you part of any organizations, charities, or anything?
Uh, I don't know. There's much to talk about. I would say we do have camps coming up. UVUbaseballcamps.com. We always have an upcoming camp on there. The reality is that for players outside the West Coast in Utah, that's kind of the route to get to Utah Valley. And it's a route that's been taken by many. So it's kind of the casual and standard response for somebody. Hey, how do we get on your radar? Got to see you play, and here's a route to do so. We have those be the most affordable camps that we possibly can um, for our prospect camps because we run them as a true tool to get people on our field and interact with prospects and not a moneymaker. So just understand that part. You probably won't find a Division I camp more affordable because the intention of these camps is to get players into Utah and see our field.
That probably goes back to doing more with less. when your recruiting budget's low, you got to have
Yeah.
more. You got to have more guys that come to you because you can't always go out 6 7 days a week. So
Well, there's no doubt, 85% of our roster is out of state. So it's something where we got to be creative as we can. And this is one of the ways that we do it.
Coach, I appreciate you coming on today. Again, thank you so much, and I absolutely loved how genuine your answers were.
No, it's
I appreciate that, and keep doing your thing, man. Like that turnaround is hard, and the nowhere like you just keep going up, man. I love that, and we'll be following. Um, have a good Christmas. Thank you for coming on, and good luck this year.
Michael. It's been awesome. No, thank you, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you and your family and all the listeners out there.
Thanks,